Good evening, and welcome back to SkyJet Wings. A couple days ago, we talked about Canada standing up to Donald Trump on tariffs and how the world is watching our response. Based on your feedback, there's another move you want to see: Canada taking a hard stand on fighter jet procurement. Should we walk away from the F-35 and choose a different path, something closer to the Swedish model? We covered this in depth, F-35 versus Gripen. So if you want the full breakdown, go watch that after this.
Tonight, I'll pull a few key points from that episode and compare them with what surfaced recently. Bottom line, I still think Canada should drop the F-35. There are serious issues with the aircraft, and we'll get into them. First, I want to bring up a recent interview with Major General Chris McKenna of Canadian NORAD Command. The questions he was asked were fair and important, but I'm not impressed with how he answered them. In my view, his responses didn't clarify much, and they raise bigger concerns about transparency and leadership, especially since this decision still isn't final.
Let's get into it. The question was simple. With rising threats in the Arctic, can the F-35 actually meet NORAD's needs? And what input is NORAD giving on Canada's future fighter program, including alternatives like the Gripen E? Major General Chris McKenna's answer basically came down to one phrase: I need overmatch. He says he has a fifth-generation threat to defeat, and Canada's pilots need the edge against high-end adversaries, especially as threats get worse by the day. Fair point. But then he pivots to passing the decision upstairs. Canada has committed to 16 F-35s, we've paid, the program is under review, and it's ultimately a government call, not the Air Force's.
To me, that sounds like fence-sitting. You're the expert. Canadians want a clear recommendation, not a shrug. When pressed, will the F-35 achieve what you need? He says, absolutely. Why? Great sensors, the right weapons, and tight interoperability with our closest ally. Here's the problem. He's selling features that, from what we're hearing, won't even be fully available on the version Canada is getting for years. So you can praise the capabilities all day, but if they're not on our jets anytime soon, what good is that to Canada or to NORAD right now? And that's why his answer doesn't settle anything. It doesn't ease concerns, it raises them.
And this is exactly what keeps happening. Big claims, shaky timelines. Now compare McKenna's comments with an Ottawa Citizen piece we discussed months ago by investigative journalist David Pugliese in his reporting on Canada's fighter jet battle, F-35 versus Gripen. Pugliese lays it out clearly. Yes, the F-35 is packed with advanced tech, stealth, modern avionics, and a sensor network that can share data across forces. That supports the most advanced fighter argument. But he also notes what Gripen advocates emphasize. The latest Gripen variant is built to operate from dispersed locations with minimal ground crew and equipment. That matters, especially for Canada and Arctic ops. Keep that point in mind. Then comes the key contrast to McKenna's great sensors and weapons pitch. The US has flagged new problems with the F-35 variant Canada plans to buy, tied to the Block 4 modernization, the very upgrades that are supposed to improve sensors and weapons. A U.S. watchdog report says Block 4 is about $6 billion over budget and around 5 years behind schedule. So selling Canada on future features is a weak argument if those upgrades won't be on our jets for years. It's like buying a car based on options that aren't included in the model you're actually getting, maybe later, but not now. And later doesn't help NORAD readiness. That's why McKenna's answers feel less like objective assessment and more like a sales pitch. Then the next question gets even more important. How concerned should we be about the F-35's historically low availability rates? McKenna says he's done site visits, like Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, and had discussions about Arctic operating procedures. But the real issue remains: can the aircraft actually be kept mission-ready, consistently, when and where Canada needs it most?
McKenna tries to calm concerns by pointing to what he saw in Wisconsin and Alaska. He says the climate in Wisconsin is Canada representative, and during his visits, he didn't see cold weather issues hurting availability. He basically argues, The media talks about problems, the GAO talks about problems, but operationally, my experience was positive. But that's not proof the problems don't exist. It just means no one briefed him on them or they didn't show up during his visit. And the Wisconsin comparison doesn't hold up. Wisconsin gets cold, sure, but it's still far south of Manitoba, and Manitoba is still south of the Arctic Circle.
Arctic cold is a different animal. What works in Wisconsin doesn't automatically work in the high north. The Tesla comparison fits. Batteries and extreme cold don't mix without extra engineering. If the F-35 struggles in deep cold, that's not a minor detail. That's a mission problem for a country that needs to patrol the Arctic and defend sovereignty. That's why the GAO report matters. And when the interviewer pressed McKenna on low availability, he mostly sidestepped it. Here's the key number from the most recent GAO reporting cited in that Ottawa Citizen piece. The F-35's mission capability rate is about 51%. Remember that, 51%.
Here's McKenna's answer to the 51% mission-capable problem. He says you fix it by right-sizing maintenance teams, improving training, making crews multi-qualified, and building an industrial base in Canada that's purpose-built to support the jet. But that's basically a non-answer. 51% means about half the time the jets can't fly. They're stuck on the ground with maintenance or technical issues. And his solution sounds like add more mechanics and infrastructure. That doesn't address the core question. Why does the jet need so much maintenance in the first place? If the platform is inherently maintenance heavy, you don't solve that with staffing alone. You just increase cost and complexity. Now compare that with the point we already flagged about the Gripen. It's designed to operate from dispersed, rough locations with minimal ground crew and support equipment. That's a huge operational advantage for a country like Canada, especially if availability and sustainment are the real bottlenecks. Then there's another major issue from episode 282, software control. Even if Canada buys the F-35, the US still controls key software and upgrades. If access is restricted or updates are withheld, that's leverage over Canadian capability. In the current political climate, that's not a theoretical concern. And that brings it back to the real strategic question. What does Prime Minister Carney prioritize now? Cost, capability, sovereignty, or resilience? Because while the F-35 may be the more advanced aircraft on paper, the Gripen is still highly capable, already used by NATO partners. And critically, Sweden and Saab have floated a big economic incentive: build in Canada, with manufacturing, parts, and jobs on Canadian soil.
Saab's pitch matters because it's not just jets, it's jobs. They're talking 6,000 to 10,000 jobs tied to building and supporting the aircraft in Canada. That's a real economic lever, and it also means less US control than you'd have with an American platform. Now, some people, like the US ambassador, have warned that if Canada doesn't buy American jets, it could hurt trade talks. I'm calling BS on that. Trump is going to hit Canada with pressure either way. Buying F-35s won't magically earn us a break on steel and aluminum tariffs. So Canada should do what's best for Canada, while still meeting NATO needs. And yes, canceling the deal is also a message. We're not going to be bullied. You don't have to go chest to chest with Trump to push back. You can do it by shifting business away and making procurement decisions based on Canadian interests. Will there be consequences? Of course, but there will be consequences no matter what. That's the reality of dealing with Trump. This fighter decision is just one piece of a bigger economic and security puzzle, but it's a moment where Canada can draw a line. Enough is enough. And zooming out, the stakes are even larger. If Trump seriously moves on Greenland, Europe is already nervous, and the whole NATO system starts to look fragile because nobody is going to stand up militarily to the United States. That's the kind of pressure point that can crack alliances. Europe won't fight the US over Greenland, so NATO's unity looks fragile. Canada has to protect its sovereignty, especially in the Arctic, and that means reducing military dependence on US-controlled systems. If the Americans control software and upgrades, they control the capability. And if the F-35 is only mission-ready about 51% of the time, that's a problem. That's why many of you are saying the same thing.
Mark Carney should make a statement, cancel the American jets, and go with the Gripen. McKenna says he needs overmatch to defeat the adversary, but the dynamic has shifted. The pressure isn't only from the north anymore, it's coming from the south. Do we really want to tie our fighter fleet to a country talking about making Canada the 51st state? That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, ring the bell for the full F-35 versus Gripen breakdown.